In my last video, I was showing you how to braid obijime. In Japanese, braided cords are called kumihimo. And those were not only obijime in the past, because in the past, Japanese professional braiders, so-called kumihimoshi, were actually busy enough when working for samurai. Because in the past, samurai armor was decorated with meters and meters of kumihimo. And when you do any type of Japanese sword fighting, like kendo, iaido, or aikido, you do know that Japanese swords do have a so-called sageo, and that is also a braided cord, a kumihimo. But in 1876, there was something that is called haitore, which was prohibiting people wearing swords with them. And that was when kumihimoshi were suddenly jobless because they were producing sageo or kumihimo for samurai armor. And when the samurai culture was prohibited in the Meiji Revolution, a lot of kumihimoshi struggled with surviving. So what they actually did in the end is they started to braid for the broader population. They started to braid obijime. That was already an item that was used when wearing obi. Up until then, obijime were actually not braided. They were either not existent. There were a lot of historical obi musubi that didn't use an obijime, or the obijime was actually made out of fabric. Today, the obijime that are made out of fabric are called marukuge. They still exist, but are usually worn by brides or kids' kimono when they go for their celebration, when they celebrate the 3, 5, or 7-year-old kids, which is a bigger celebration in Japan. Besides them, you barely see those marukuge anymore, although they were mainstream for most of the obijime history. Today, there are some people who produce them and sell them because they want to get them back in fashion. And honestly speaking, I do like marukuge obijime a lot too. They're really easy to tie. They're really, really cute. And on top of that, you can easily make them by yourself and also adjust the length. Especially for people who are plus sized, I think marukuge are just perfect. So today, I really want to show you how to make them. Marukuge obijime look like this. These are all the ones that I will make in this video. And they are the perfect project for scrap fabrics. Especially when you sew a lot of kimono items like haori, kimono, and obi. You will, like me, have a lot of leftovers that are just wide or not so wide, really long strips. This was an obi. This is an unfinished project behind me. This was also an obi. And for me personally, I don't really know what to do with all of these. So let's turn all of these into an obijime. I actually wanted rather to have like a small pattern on these, but this, for example, has quite a big pattern on it, and I'm not quite sure how this will turn out as an obijime itself. So I thought I could just pimp this up with some embroidery. Wish me luck with the embroidery. For the embroidery, I quickly have put on the marukuge obijime that I have, and I marked out with some pins where the placement on the obijime for the pattern would be quite cute. And now I'm going to measure out how long this is into the obijime. I'm going to put the measurements for this on screen, but keep in mind, when you don't have the same kimono silhouette as me, this might not work out for you. You can try, but it might not work out. So I will get started with the embroidery and I hopefully see you in a few days. And with the embroidery finished, we can finally start to assemble the obijime. And besides all the fabric you need, you will also need some knitting yarn. This is the cheapest and the thickest I could find. I also have some leftovers I'm probably gonna use first, but this is something you want to have for this project too. The strips of fabric, I have cut them in total into 2 different widths and 2 different lengths, and I'm gonna go a tiny bit over it. All the strips of fabric I have cut for myself. These are going to be obijime I'm gonna keep for me. I made them 160 centimeter long. For me, that's even a tiny bit on the long side, but you know, it's kind of a standard length. The other length I'm going to do is this one, and this one I actually kept at 200 centimeter. I am gonna make this plus sized. I think 200 centimeter is actually way too long, but you know, you can later on always cut it shorter. I want to send this off to a very special person. I know that they have issues with finding obijime that fit them properly. Whatever you think obijime is a proper fit. So I want to send this to a special person, so I'm gonna keep this just really long. And in case it's way too long, they can chop it off by themselves. Hi, it's Billy from the future. You can see me here cutting all of the strips into the wrong width, and I ended up redoing all of them after having them sewed and turned inside out. I'm not going into detail, you will see. So in the end, I ended up doing the following widths. I did a 5 centimeter width, a 5.5 centimeter width, a 6 centimeter width, and a 6.5 centimeter width. You will see at the very end of this video what difference it makes and what is better for casual, what is better for formal. In the meanwhile, enjoy me making these obijime, and I see you in a few minutes. I didn't really show you this in the beginning, but I've also bought some Indian embroidery ribbon that I want to turn into an obijime, and this one is really see-through, so I am going to flatline this with some satin. This satin is a leftover from another obi, and I had to rip it out because, oh my gosh, I hate working with satin, and because it's not long enough at this point, I will have to sew this together. In general, don't piece your obijime. That's really important. You should not really piece them together. Reason is that obijime means translated actually obi tightener, and it is seriously very often the last resort of holding up your obi. Sometimes, and this is kimono dressing experience plus me talking as a professional kimono teacher, showing you or telling you how to properly put on your kimono. When you have the feeling one day, oh my gosh, my obi this morning did not really turn out tight enough, you don't have to undo it. Just tie your obijime a tiny bit tighter on top to hold it up. You will never be able to tell when my obi actually was a tiny bit too loose in the morning. So you really want to be able to pull onto that obijime and really tighten it up without having the fear of something might rip. So you should not piece it. So in case you want to do a patchwork obijime or something really easy, you want to have 2 different ends, so you piece it in the center with 2 different fabrics. I think might look really cute, by the way. Keep in mind that you want to probably also flatline it with a long continuous piece of fabric, just to really have it strong enough to really be able to tighten it. My 2 flatlining is going to be not only my ribbon, I am also going to flatline this one. These are actually 2 pieces of fabric because it's again see-through, and I think this looks really nice when you can see also the snowflakes here in the bag. Oh, this is going to be so cute. Okay, let me quickly flatline these and piece and whatever I have to do now, and then we get finally into really sewing this obijime stuff. Definitely not the prettiest flatlining you have ever seen in your whole life, but it's fine as it is. Ow. And now it's time to move on to the next step, which is folding all of the strips in half, right side on right side. And a lot of you always ask me how much seam allowance I'm using, but to be honest, I'm a kimono sewist, so seam allowance is like not a, how do you call that, a fixed size for me. But in this video I'm gonna use 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, so feel free to use that as reference. After sewing it, I have these really long 4 tubes and I will have to turn them inside out, and seriously, I'm not gonna bore you with that, so I'm gonna check in with you after they're turned inside out. Oh, this is just me redoing all of them again with more seam allowance because they were just way too wide. It was ridiculously wide. So I'm taking like about 1 centimeter off right now. So see you in I don't know how many hours, or probably tomorrow. I ended up ripping off or turning around all of those tubes again and then sew them with a bigger seam allowance. Then I cut off all the excess seam allowance and turn them inside out again. I think this width looks already way better than the first width I had. So I'm really pleased with this, and I basically think it was really a happy accident because I noticed when I was trying to turn this inside out again that my safety pin got stuck here into the seam allowance. So what I'm doing now, I'm sewing this down with an easy running stitch by hand, of course, so you cannot see the stitches on the outside, to hold this basically down. So this is easier later when I have to pull my yarn through. So I'm gonna finish this off too, and then I'm going to check in with you and we're gonna thread the yarn through all of these tubes. One lunch later, now we have to fill the tubes with some yarn, and what I have done here is I've laid out my obijime in front of me, and now I'm just gonna measure the yarn along it, back, forth, how much I will need. I'm kind of going to feel it by hand, the thickness, if this is about the thickness that I want. And because I had to cut the seam allowance of all of these tubes, I have now these super long thin strips of fabric. I am going to try to fill these in as well. I told you, it's a scrap fabric project, and who knows, this might be the way more historical and accurate way to do. Last but not least, we will have to finish off the ends, so they're gonna look like so. This is now super easy. Here is it on the other one, really cute. Let me show you quickly how to do that. First of all, we're gonna chop this off, and I do recommend to chop this off a tiny bit shorter than your actual obijime is gonna be, like about 1 centimeter. So I'm just gonna lower this here and cut it, and I'm gonna close this up again. So you can see I have a tiny bit here, only fabric. So it looks like this. And then you're going to do a running stitch here about 1 centimeter from the edge. And I usually start where my central back seam is. And because I want to have the knot on the inside, I'm going to put the needle in on the inside and pull it through. So this knot is nicely hidden. Make sure to have a really, really nice and thick knot because we're later going to pull on this. And then we're going to do, as I said, a running stitch here. And now first what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this all in to where the running stitch is. So I'm going to fold about 1 centimeter in. I again use a safety pin to really push this in, because the nicer you can push this in, the better it's gonna be the outcome. Like so. Now it's gonna look like this. And now you're gonna take the thread and pull. Oh, my end. If something slips out like it did right now, I'm just gonna push it back in and pull. Now you can see it's closing up like a sausage. I still have my needle on the thread because now I'm going to sew this down. Now I'm going to sew this down just with a few stitches back and forth, like so, securing all of this in. These stitches are usually not very visible, but also in case you wonder, the ends of the obijime are not really visible anyway because your sleeves should be in the way and covering them up. So even if it's a tiny bit visible, don't worry about it too much. And then to hide off the knot, I'm going to do one last stitch in. I'm going to push my needle here through in the center. And I'm going to make a knot. And then I'm going to push it back in. And you can see I just pull my needle randomly out anywhere. And you can cut that. And here we go. Like tiny sausages. And now I'm gonna finish off the other two as well. And I'm going to check in with you with some cute outfits that I was planning around these obijime. It's so dark today and I'm not really willing to pull up more lights. Oops. How's that? Okay. Whoa. All the obijime are finished, and you know, in the end I did 4 different widths. I also added in a very narrow one with only 5 centimeter strip in the beginning, and then a 1 centimeter seam allowance. This one I think is the most casual one, along with the 5.5 centimeter width that I did with also 1 centimeter seam allowance, and the other two are 6 centimeter and 6.5 centimeter width with also 1 centimeter seam allowance. Personally, the narrower obijime is, the better it is for casual wear. The wider it gets, the better it is for formal wear. That is also what I had planned with this one. That is why I wore this one today for the reveal shots with a formal kimono outfit, because this was exactly what I had planned with this one. The other 3 are planned to be more on the casual side. Also, with the embroidery on this one, I had to go a tiny bit thicker than I had in mind. I actually had this width in mind. You can for sure tell it has quite some difference in width. Well, this is not my favorite, but I gave it a try. And now I want to put on my back. I'm gonna put it back on. I kind of feel so naked without it. By the way, if you want to know how to tie obijime properly, please check out the video I have for it on my channel. For those who are new here, you probably don't know, but I am a professional kimono teacher, which means I teach people how to properly put on a kimono. That's actually my specialty, and that's what is my job. I think you can tell that an obijime is a really easy make, and it's perfect for using up scrap fabric as much as scrap yarn you have left over if you're a knitter like me. And I hope you have a lot of fun with experimenting and trying out different fabrics, different designs. What I have been showing you in this video is, I think, the most basic way you can actually go. There is another nice scrap fabric item, an item that I really like to make out of scrap fabric, and that is imonuki. I will also link this video in the top right corner if you want to look into it and find out what that is. I'm mentioning it because my patrons and Patreon this year have made an imonuki swap. So they were making imonuki for each other and sending them to each other, which was really sweet. They didn't even ask me if I wanted to be a part of it. But I guess they were figuring I'm super busy, because they did that when I was seriously busy. However, I hope that this one is also going to be one of those tiny projects you can make a sweet obijime swap with. Anyway, that was it for today. If you're new here and you feel like sticking around and learning more about kimono from a professional certified kimono teacher, feel free to subscribe. I would be really happy to have you here. And now it's time for the final reveal.